Alright guys, welcome back again to more Umineko. We are nearing the end of episode 3 at long last, and to tell you the truth, I don't know how this episode is going to end either. In fact, I probably won't know how any of the episodes are going to end, considering how different each one seems to go. But most importantly, I am curious to see if Ava Beatrice will continue her stint moving forward, or if this will be her only shot at becoming a witch, because for all we know, Battler and Bieto may put a stop to it. I don't know. I'm curious about it though, so if anything else, hope you all continue to enjoy. Thank you all for the love and support. Let's do this. Alright everyone, welcome back. Bieto completely erased all traces of her magical power, became gold butterflies and passed through the wall, escaping to the wind and rain outside. Bieto felt sick from the bottom of her heart. Why? Because she had been attacked by the new witch? Probably not. Of course, she also felt sick over the loss of her master. But even more than that, Bieto was enraged at the barbarism which had boorishly stolen the union between the two reunited lovers. Bieto had poured out almost all of her magical power to reunite them. That miracle had been achieved only as a result of all that, yet had taken such a short time to steal it away. Bieto trembled at the barbarous cruelty which had ended it so fast. And it was also the true form of the act she herself had committed up until that point. So just as strongly as Bieto hated the new witch, she looked at their previous self with disgust. But now she had to escape. If she was targeted next, she would probably lose her life. And it wouldn't even be funny if the chess player descended like a god, ended up being attacked and killed by the pieces.
45着弾確認標的資産間違いなく先代様を撃破しました。また私たちの撃墜気象が増えちまうにひ愛し合う二人なんだっけ。引き裂いて一度合わせて二度もう一度引き裂いて三度楽しめるだっけ。そのついでにあのクソうるさいババアまでさよならできて最高にご機嫌よ。ラノウェイ文句ないわよね。
ございませんともベアトリーチェ様。
あいつは魔女の碑文の儀式を妨害したのよ。第一のバンド生贄を勝手に蘇らせて私の儀式を妨害したわ。文句言われる筋合いなんかなんにもないわよ。しかしずるいなあ。あいつは死体を残さないのね。あのババアも思いっきり何度も無限にいじめ殺して遊んでやろうと思ったのに。ジョージが来てないわよ。いつ降りたのよ。
いつって、あれは何時くらいだったっけ。
確か4時か5時くらいだったかな。最低でも1時間以上は前だよ。
俺たち眠くなってその後は多分居眠りしてたし。
Oh, so now it's just the three of them now, huh?
でも多分ジェシカの言う通りだと思うぜ。1時間か2時間くらい前だった。
私もそのくらいの頃だと記憶しています。
Oh, I forgot about Nanjo. I always forget about him.
コーヒーのおかわりはいるかと聞かれましたからな。
Something hard to believe had happened. Apparently, when Auntie Ava had left for a second to visit the lavatory, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsu had disappeared. There's no way they went hiding somewhere. Of course, the doors and windows had all been rigorously checked, and all were locked from the inside. Not one of them was broken. And that wasn't just the first floor, the second floor was the same. Also, all of the doors and windows were designed in such a way that they couldn't be locked from the outside. In other words, there was no way that Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi had gone outside, and yet they couldn't be found. Furthermore, they weren't the only ones who had disappeared. Astonishingly, George Aniki had too. George Aniki had left saying that he was going to get more coffee, and had gone downstairs more than an hour earlier. I'd been under the impression that he was having a good conversation with Auntie Ava and the rest, but Auntie Ava, who had been in the lobby the whole time, said that no one had come down. Since all the doors and windows are locked from the inside, it's hard to imagine that they went outside. Nevertheless, 3 humans had evaporated from this barricaded guest house, which had become a perfect locked room. It's hard to imagine any reason why they'd hide themselves away for a surprise prank in a situation like this. It's probably appropriate to think that they'd become caught up in this crime. When Auntie Ava learned that her only son was missing, she went half insane, running from room to room and yelling his name loudly. And Jessica, who had suddenly lost both of her parents, followed suit. Cries of George, and Mom and Dad were even now continuing to echo through the guest house. I think George said something about wanting to see Shannon's face. It would be reasonable to imagine that he had snuck out of the guest house and gone to the mansion. However, I don't know about Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi. Maybe they guessed that's what happened and went to the mansion to search for him, without even telling Auntie Ava? At this rate, it's only a matter of time before we start talking about leaving the guest house to search for them. At this point, I'd be in favor of that. We said that shutting ourselves up in the guest house would be safe, and shut ourselves in this morning as a big happy family of 12 people, and yet now there are only 4 people here. In other words, being here does not imply safety. However, there's something even more important that we mustn't forget. That's the fact that all of the doors and windows were locked from the inside. This is a locked room. How they had vanished from this place? We searched around thoroughly. However, we were unable to find any signs of anyone hiding. The 3 of them had almost certainly been taken outside the guest house.
どうやってでしょう。まさか隠し扉とかがあるとか。
隠し扉？
扉も窓も外から閉めることは構造上不可能です。釣り糸の類を使ってもこの構造では無理でしょうな。となれば扉や窓以外から出たと考えるのが妥当でしょう。
確かに。そういう論法にもなるだろうよ。隠し扉が存在しないなんて断言は誰にもできない。しかし、そういう発想に飛躍する前に、俺はもっとシンプルな可能性も疑ってる。
と申しますと
For some time, Battler had been opening windows, opening the shutters, and checking outside, and repeating this for each window.
この窓は静かだな。なるほど。この窓は他と違って、建物の構造上、風が吹き込まないわけか。
そのようですな。こんなにも外は風雨なのに、雨も風も入ってこないとは不思議な気持ちです。
南條先生、今、窓を開けたとき、音を感じたかい？
いえ、気にはなりませんでしたな。よく油が効いていると思います。
つまり、誰も見ていない廊下の窓から、ひょろっと抜け出すことは可能なわけだ。しかもこの窓なら、風も吹き込まないから、風圧でカーテンや扉が音を立てることもない。静かなもんさ。
Battler leaned out and looked at the ground below. He was searching for some sign that George had jumped down, but at a glance he didn't see any mark like that on the grass in the middle of the pouring rain.
こういう窓が1階にもあるのかもしれない。誰にも気づかれずに表へ出ることは可能だぜ。
しかし扉はおろか、窓はすべて施錠されて鎧戸まで閉まっていましたぞ。 出ることは可能でも閉めることは不可能だ。
閉められるぜ。こうやってカチャン。
Battler closed the window and locked it as though this was perfectly obvious.
まさかバトラさんが。
最後に中の人間が鍵を閉めればこんな密室は朝飯前だ。
しかしそれではそれでは。
Nanjo turned pale and shook his head several times, because the thing that Battler said was presenting a certain truth to him that was frightening even to imagine.
俺の想像したトリックならな。しかしこんなトリックを使えば怪しまれる人物は極めて限定される。
He didn't want to say it in front of Nanjo, but after eliminating Jessica, who had been with him the whole time, the only ones who could have done it were Nanjo and Ava.
私はそんなことをしませんぞ。誓ってもいい。
となるとエヴァおばさんと南條先生のアリバイ合戦ってことになる。俺たちは二人とも怪しんでそれぞれを別々に監禁すればいいだけの話。逆に言えばこのトリックはもっと生存者が多ければ有効かもしれないが、これだけ人数が減った状況下では大して有効ではないんだ。
No, in fact, there's a chance they could dig their own grave with it. It should have been more expedient to make it look like the culprit was outside, and to intentionally leave a door unlocked or break a window.
もしこの失踪劇が今日の昼にでも起これば、俺は自信満々にこの説を発表しただろうよ。だが、この段階に至っては、全然自信が持てないぜ。何なんだこいつは。一体何を意味してやがるんだ。この密室はよ。
やはりその。
なんだい、南條先生。思いつきでもいいから言ってくれよ。
Because Dr. Nanjo looked like he was trying to swallow his words despite having thought of something, I urged him on. After he refused several times, saying that it was just a foolish idea, he finally said it out loud.
その。やはりこれは本当に魔女の仕業ではないのかと。
バカバカしい。魔女なんているわけがねえぜ。
魔女は私たちに訴えたいのです。人間にはできないことをやってのけるからこそ、自分を魔女だと認めさせたいに違いないのです。私はこのゲストハウス全体の密室からの失踪は、そういう魔女からのメッセージだと感じています。考えてはならないのです。意味なんてきっとないのです。私は恐ろしい。
As Dr. Nanjo shook with fear, it looked like he was trying to erase the fearsome thoughts that he kept imagining one after the other. When we went downstairs, Auntie Ava and Jessica were enraged, and were each making a lot of noise about leaving this place and searching for their respective families. Excuse me, guys. It was a desire that naturally hit those who can no longer see their family. Auntie Ava told Dr. Nanjo and me to stay here, but I shook my head and started walking.
もう引きこもりはたくさんだぜ。俺も外の空気を吸いたくなってきた。
ああ、行くならさっさと行こうぜ。もうこんなところに閉じこもってるのは真っ平さ。早く父さんや母さんやジョージ兄さんを探しに行こう。
The blood had all risen to Jessica's head. I hope it doesn't set off her asthma.
残りたい人は勝手に残ってればいいわ。とにかく私たちは表を探してくるわ。
南條先生はどうする？一人で留守番してるかい？
いえ、私もご一緒させてください。
If the alternative was holding up alone in a guest house whose security was by no means guaranteed, it would be better to be in a danger zone as a group of 4 people. Auntie Ava was holding the gun. Moving separately from her was almost like asking to be mated to the next victim. Well, I mean, either way, you're gonna be the next victim. You can't fight this. Oh, Battler could, possibly. In this way, the four of us decided to leave the guest house. We barricaded ourselves in, saying we'd be safe if we did, and then lost 8 people. It was almost as though this had been nothing more than a holding cell from which the sacrifices could be killed one after the other. You know, I think, although it's very, very unlikely that Bieto might help them, but at this point she's also weakened, so I don't know. We removed the chain, unlocked the front door, and opened it. It was already pitch black out. While there were some lights outside which dimly lit the pathway, they didn't have enough power to illuminate the darkness that some suspicious person was likely to be hiding in.
行くわよ。遅れても知らないんだからね。
Still holding her gun, Auntie Ava dashed out without an umbrella. Jessica followed after her. After looking at each other, Dr. Nanjo and I chased after them. What in the world is happening in this mansion? On this island? Since yesterday, I've just been shut up in the cousin's room in the guest house with the rest of my cousins. So I don't know anything about what's been going on outside. Just what has been happening in those places I don't know about. Outside the room, in the mansion, and on this island. Everything is occurring, everything is proceeding, and everything is ending without my knowing it. Somewhere in my heart, I had already begun to give up. Most likely, not one of us will see tomorrow morning. When the seagulls cry, none shall be left alive. Jessica's woeful voice echoed throughout the rose garden. Perhaps it was the intuition of a person who lived on this island. After Jessica had looked in the rose garden where Auntie Rosa and Maria had fallen and seen nothing, she had gone to look in the arbor next. Normally the arbor was probably a wonderful location to enjoy tea peacefully while appreciating the roses on a good sunny day. Who knows, maybe even Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi had their days where they relaxed and enjoyed tea together there. In that arbor lay the bodies of Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi. At least they weren't drenched in the rain like Auntie Rosa and Maria had been. But there was no way I could say that out loud to Jessica at that moment.
どうなんだ南條先生。
考察ですな。ほら、ご覧なさい。首にくっきりと何か細いもので締めた跡が残っている。
だな。まさかこっちが主たる死因のわけはねえだろうよ。
The two stake-like weapons decorated with an occult design that were lying on the ground had been found driven into Uncle Kraus's thigh area, and near Aunt Natsuhi's calf. When we had found these sticking out of my parents' forehead and chest, we had decided to leave them exactly as they were for the police and to preserve the crime scene. But Jessica no longer cared about such matters and immediately pulled the stakes out of her parents' forsaken bodies.
これで頭、胸、腹、膝、足の5つをえぐられた死体が出たわけね。くそくそくそ犯人め殺してやる殺してやる第8の番まではこれで終わったわ。続くは第9の番なの。魔女は蘇り、誰も生き残れはしない。上等だぜ。魔女が蘇るってことは犯人が堂々と姿を現してくれるってことなんだろう。何が誰も生き残れないだ。私が殺してやる。父さんと母さんを殺した犯人をこの手で絶対に殺してやる。
Jessica howled furiously, her emotions laid bare. To avoid being crushed by her grief, she could do nothing but resist it with anger.
まだジョージが見つかってないわ。ジェシカちゃんたちはここにいたければいるといい。私は屋敷へ行くわ。
エヴァさん、バラバラに行動してはいけない。みんなで一緒に行動しなくては危険です。
兄さんたちはもうどうしようもないわ。でもジョージはまだどこかで生きているかもしれない。ここで時間を潰してる暇はないのよ。
As Auntie Ava screamed this, Jessica glared at her. Auntie Ava had no more time to bother about the dead. She was more concerned for the safety of her only son, who was yet to be seen.
ジェシカちゃんはここでお父さんとお母さんのそばにいるといい。私はちょっと屋敷に行ってくるわ。バトラ君も南條先生もここにいてくれていい。
After saying this and leaving no time for debate, Auntie Ava rushed out of the arbor. I called out for her to stop, but there was no way she would listen. However, by now, being alone in this situation meant nothing short of death. If we silently watched her leave, it would be the same as letting her die. As long as Auntie Ava was unwilling to stop, we would have no choice but to follow her. And while it may be cruel to say so, Uncle Kraus and Aunt Natsuhi were already dead, so there was nothing more we could do for them. In the end, we had no choice but to console Jessica and head for the mansion together. Fortunately, Jessica stood up. Perhaps she had been able to draw the line under her grief for the moment. But what had surfaced in its place was an expression like a demon.
私がこの手でぶっ殺して必ず敵を取ってやる。行こうぜバトラー。犯人を見つけたら邪魔をするなよ。私が絶対に殺す。
俺も親父たちの仇があるんだ。悪いが早いもん勝ちだぜ。
そうだな。ぶっ殺してやろうぜ。
At my words, Jessica finally seemed to feel like someone had sympathized with her emotions. She still had that dark expression, but I felt Jessica regaining some of her sanity. We took off, chasing after Auntie Ava. Through the rose garden, up the stone steps, running at full speed towards the mansion, whose large intimidating shadow flashed in the lightning. With this, the Epitaph murders had finished the 8th twilight, and now, on the 9th twilight, the witch will revive. None shall be left alive. I will most likely lose my life, but at the very least, I wanted to burn the truth into my eyes. That was the only thing motivating me to move at that moment. We were able to reunite with Auntie Ava, who was having trouble with the lock to the front door. It seemed that all the blood had risen to Auntie Ava's head. That was probably making her fingers clumsy. It seemed she couldn't even handle the simple task of inserting the key into the lock. Then there was a faint sound, the sound of the door unlocking, just as though it had waited for all the survivors to unite before opening. It seemed to me as though the malicious mansion was trying to swallow all of the remaining humans at once. The stench that erupted outwards at the instant the door opened, could it really be explained just as a smell? It wasn't just a charred smell from grandfather. I think it may also have contained something like regrets held by so many dead, including our parents and all of the servants. What did it mean as it billowed out, overwhelming us? Was it the cry of the dead telling us not to enter? However, Auntie Ava didn't even flinch at something like that. And we who had to chase after her were forced to step into the mansion despite receiving that message.
ジョージ？ジョージ！聞こえたら返事をしなさい！ジョージ！
Auntie Ava shouted at the top of her lungs. Considering the situation, it's probably far too optimistic to imagine that he's alive. When we also started following Auntie Ava's example and calling George Aneki's name in loud voices, Auntie Ava found something and stopped walking. She was standing in front of the door to the parlor.
これは南條先生、ちょっと来てもらえるかしら。
何事ですかな。
I had heard from the adults about creepy magic circles that had been drawn on doors such as the one to the parlor. Creepy was the only word to describe that thing, which had been scrawled there with a deep red paint, reminiscent of blood that slowly dripped down. However, that had supposedly been there since this morning. Wondering why Auntie Ava, who had seen it already, would think it odd now. Jessica and I stared at the door.
確かにこんな数字が書かれていた記憶はありません。
ええ、なかったわ。不気味な魔法文字みたいなのは書かれていたけど、数字は書かれていなかった。
From what the two of them said, only a magic circle had been here this morning. However, right now, there were 8 digits newly written in the upper part of the magic circle. "07151129." I didn't know what it meant. But I didn't even want to imagine the thought process of whoever wrote this. It was drawn with what was probably the same paint as the magic circle, but it had clearly been written very recently. The way it had dried and the condition of the color was completely different from the magic circle part.
どうせ魔法的な意味があるんだろうぜ。深く考えたって意味なんかあるわけもないさ。
Jessica intentionally spat those words out in an attempt to wipe out how creepy it was.
魔法陣というものかもしれませんな。ある種の数字遊びに魔除けが宿るという考え方です。どの列を足しても同じ数字になるみたいなものを皆さんも見聞きしたことがおありでしょう。
あれは四角形の中に埋めた数字の話じゃなかった？これは横一列だもの。何の意味があるのかさっぱりだわ。多分ジェシカちゃんの言うのが正解よ。私たちが深く考えたところで意味なんか何もないわ。
Even though she said that, she probably suspected that it might actually mean something. Using an old receipt or something from inside her pocket, Auntie Ava definitely wrote that number down with a sharp ballpoint pen. Because an 8-digit number would probably be a little difficult to memorize unless it had some kind of pattern.
これ、日にちとか、な。
日にち？何の話？
いや、偶然だろうけどな。俺の誕生日、7月15日なんだ。0715が、7月15日を示すのかなって思ったら、1129も、ほら、11月29日って読んだら、ちょうど語呂がいいかなって思ってよ。
なんでバトラーの誕生日がこんなとこに書いてあるんだよ。そして、11月29日ってなんだよ。
俺が知りてえぜ。まあ、たまたまの偶然だろうけどな。そう考えたら、なんだか不気味になっちまったぜ。11月29日が誰かの誕生日だったりとかするのか？うちの家族は違うぜ。親父もキリエさんも、エンジェも違う。もちろん、俺のお袋もだ。
心当たりがありませんな。金蔵さんの誕生日でも、源氏さんの誕生日でもないはずだ。
うちの家族も違うわよ。ローザやマリアちゃんでもないわ。
うちの家族だって違うぜ。カノン君も違うし、シャノンも違う。私、使用人の人の誕生日にはちゃんとプレゼント渡してるからみんな知ってるけど、11月29日に誕生日の人間なんて知らないぜ。
Once we started imagining the 8 digits, which we had thought were meaningless, were actually 2 dates written together, it really started to look that way. However, its true meaning may be something completely different, or there may be no meaning at all. Anyway, since we don't have any real clue, it's probably pointless to stand around here analyzing it. More important was the inside of the parlor. This morning, behind each of the doors in a magic circle drawn on them, there had been the body of the victim. And now that the number had been newly added to the door, what new thing had been added inside the parlor? When Auntie Ava tried to open it, she felt the resistance of the lock. She immediately took out a master key and put it in the keyhole. As soon as she opened the door, Auntie Ava let out a high-pitched scream and ran inside. That alone was enough to tell us what had happened inside the room. Dr. Nanjo and I looked at each other, and I shook my head slightly as we entered the parlor.
ジョージ！ジョージ！しっかりして！ジョージ！南條先生、早く！
George Aniki had fallen alongside Shannon Chan's body. His chest was stained bright red, and from his still opened eyes, all my condolences to Auntie Ava, but I couldn't pick up any signs of life. After moving to take his pulse, Dr. Nanjo shook his head wordlessly, reporting that George Aniki was dead. Brushing him aside, Auntie Ava once again crouched beside George Aniki and started crying at the top of her lungs. With this, Aniki's death, one thing had become certain. the murders would not be ending at the 8th twilight. Alright guys, I'm going to end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. At the very least, amongst all this terror, we have Bieto, who finally understands and realizes the value of a life. So maybe, just maybe, things will change moving forward. If anything else, I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you all for watching.